sure that you have a card and that you get 3 signatures from the reps from Tea Party Patriots. Ladies, I'm going to make you stand up one more time. They're at this table right here. So don't go running, and this table. Don't go running right now, but at one of the breaks, if you guys can get their signatures and get entered, I'd love to see who wins tonight at the banquet dinner. And speaking of Tea Party Patriots, it's an honor and a privilege to have our next speaker joining us. I've known Beth Martin for the last 5 years. Beth and I became friends right after the 2008 election when I started SGP with Terry Christoph. Beth and a few others, a handful who are still with our team today, were the first members of Smart Girl Politics leadership team. And we were the first women who rallied the call for the Tea Party. Beth and our initial group were the first ones to join Don't Go Movement and Michael Patrick Leahy's Teacot to put on the February 27, 2009 first Tea Parties. Obviously, everybody knows where it went from there. We went ahead and did the April Tea Parties as well, April 15th, tax-free day. And from there, Beth and others went on to launch what is today Tea Party Patriots. I'm honored and privileged to call her my friend. She's been a huge supporter of not just me, but our entire organization. And she's a woman who, anytime we have ever needed anything, she remembers where she came from and who started, and she's remained a loyal friend to us. So it's my honor and privilege to welcome my friend, Beth Martin.
Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you, Stacy, for that very kind introduction. On Tuesday night, December 2nd, 2008, I was sitting at home on my sofa watching the TV and watching the election returns. And yes, it was December and not November, because in Georgia we had a general election runoff. And we had that runoff for Saxby Chambliss, who is a U.S. Senator and was up for re-election in 2008. In October of 2008, he voted, along with Senator McCain and then Senator Obama, for TARP. And the citizens of Georgia were sick and tired of this squishy behavior where we couldn't see the difference between Republicans and Democrats. And he wound up being punished in the general election and going to a runoff. He did ultimately win, but the people in Georgia sent him a message. That same night, as I was sitting there on my sofa watching the election returns, I was on my laptop talking with Stacy for the very first time online in the first Smart Girl Politics meet and greet, online meet and greet. And from that, I was taking all sorts of insane notes, and as soon as the official meeting was over, I was emailing Stacy and Terry saying, here's what everyone just said we need to do, how can I help? And it was so wonderful to be engaged with this group of women who wanted to be educated and engaged, and they became very, very effective. What Stacy and Terry did was set the groundwork, along with what Michael Patrick Leahy and Rob Appel were doing with top conservatives on Twitter, and what Eric Odom did with Don't Go. They laid the foundation so that when the Tea Party movement started, we were ready to go. They had the foundation in place, and when the spark was lit by Rick Santelli, we were able to run with it. And we did, and we've grown and grown and grown. And what we've seen is that when we have an engaged, or when we have an educated, engaged, effective electorate, we scare and we shock the ruling elite establishment. And that is exactly what we did. And we were so effective that the establishment started looking at ways to silence us and to diminish us and to dismiss us and to say that what we were doing was crazy and wouldn't work. And when we continued, they turned the IRS into a weapon against us to use that to silence us. And at Tea Party Patriots, we knew that was happening with the IRS, and we knew it was happening with other groups because we were affected. And we knew the other groups were being affected as well. And what I've learned in the last 3.5 months since Mother's Day is just how deep the silencing effect went with the IRS, and how many people truly were scared. They stopped acting and being engaged at all. They were educated, but they were afraid to be engaged. We cannot allow that to happen. And we have to continue to stand up and fight. And in 2009, we were upset about the stimulus bill. We were upset about cap and trade. We were outraged about Obamacare. And we continued to fight, and we watched what happened, and we learned the tricks and maneuvers that were happening in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate, and because we understood those tricks, we figured out a way, and we almost stopped what ultimately became Obamacare from being law. And many of you sitting in here today were with me the weekend that law was passed in March of 2010. And until Stupak actually caved, and it took immense pressure on that Democrat to cave, until he did, there looked like there was a possibility we would prevent that from being law. There were hardly any Democrats voting the way that we wanted them to vote. The odds of us succeeding were nearly impossible. And that did not stop us from fighting. We did it because it was the right thing to do, because our freedom was at stake. And at the time, in 2009 and 10, the Republicans were all on board with what we were doing. And they all voted the same way. And they claimed to support what we were doing. But we knew in 2008 that they were willing to vote for TARP. And we knew, looking back from 2001 to 2009, that they had voted not just for TARP, but for No Child Left Behind and Medicaid Part D. So we knew that if they won the majority, we'd have to hold them accountable. They won the majority in the House of Representatives, and right now, it is vitally important that we hold them accountable. You've got to be educated on what these guys are doing in Capitol Hill right now and in this August recess. You've got senators like Mike Lee and Ted Cruz who are standing up to the establishment, and they are calling for the government to be completely funded except for Obamacare. And they want to stop Obamacare from being fully implemented. And because of that, we've got people like John McCain continuing to call them crazy or wacko birds like he did before. And we see people like Eric Cantor, who on Drudge this morning, there was a quote where he says, if you could give me 60 senators to vote this way, then I'll get what you need for the House. Otherwise, we're not going to stand up and fight, is basically what he's saying. I don't know about you, but when I started doing this in 2009 and 2010, and even in 2008 on the call or on that first meet and greet with Terry and Kristen and Stacy, I did it because I knew it would be very difficult. But I was standing up to fight, not for some continuing resolution sequester level spending that the Republicans seem to have planted their flag for right now. I did it because I'm concerned about our country. And right now, what we need to be doing over the next 6 weeks is making sure that the rest of America understands what's happening with this law.
Absolutely.
Big business has received waivers. They've received waivers and they've received delays. And now the business mandate is completely delayed for the next year, thanks to President Obama just by the stroke of a pen doing this. Big labor is saying that President Obama's promise that we can all keep our health insurance, which was that was one of the things that they said in order to convince people in 2009 and 10 to vote for it. I promise you'll be able to keep your current health insurance. Well, even the heads of the 3 largest labor unions are saying that that promise is hollow. They're saying this law will destroy or shatter their employees' health care. And they're saying that it will destroy the 40-hour work week. So big business gets a delay. Big labor is saying it's a huge problem and will shatter the work week and the health care of their employees. And now big government, the members of Congress and their staff don't want to live under the exchanges. And they voted for these exchanges, and they created a law and said they were going to live under them, but they don't want to do that. So President Obama figured out a way to give them an exemption. And he personally made sure they have an exemption through rules and regulations from a bureaucracy and bureaucratic agency is making these rules and regulations. And what's so incredibly disgusting about this is that the members of Congress are not going to vote. They haven't voted, so there's no record to hold them to. But they've made themselves exempt from it. And they're going, oh, well, we can't do anything about it. The Office of Personnel Management did this, and we can't do anything about it. We're going to see that kind of finger pointing and blame shifting and lack of accountability over and over and over and over with this law. That's the way the entire 2,000-page law was written. And this is just the beginning of it. So we've got big business, big labor, and big government not having to live under this law the way the rest of America has to live under it. That is wrong, and I'm here today to ask you to stand with me, to stand with Senator Lee and Senator Cruz, and stand up for the American people. We have got to go and hold every single congressman and every single senator accountable. And this month, while they have town halls, we've got to go and get them on the record. They're either with us, the people, or they're not. They're either with us or they're with a special interest. If they voted against this law in 2009 and 10, and they vote to fund it, it's flip-flopping. It's exactly what we did not want John Kerry to do in 2004. They're acting no better than the Democrats, and they do not want us to call them out on it. They want it to be about Republicans versus Democrats. And I'm here to tell you it's about the ruling elite versus us, the people. Now, very quickly, because my time's running out, when we're going and talking about this, talk to people about it and say you want a delay of this law. It's very important because it's a way to talk to them in a way that they understand. Talk to them and say, you want the law delayed, just like big business is getting delayed. The delay. And the only way to delay this is to stop spending money on it. We've stood up and we've been frustrated with the overspending the government has. And we're saying we'll put all of that aside as long as you do not continue to spend money on this law that the majority of Americans still do not want, and that big business isn't going to have to live under. Big labor is trying to figure out how they cannot live under it, and big government is not living under it. We want the same thing. If it's good enough for the 3 of them, it's good enough for us. And the only way to do it is to stop spending our tax money on a law we don't want. And the only way to do that is through this continuing resolution. And what Senator Lee and Cruz are doing, it will work for the length of time of the continuing resolution until it comes back up. So this isn't a permanent fix, but it's what we can do right now. And it's all we can do right now. And it's vitally important that we do this. Because right now, while the Republicans are sitting there going, oh, we can't do it unless we have enough senators to do it, the federal government is spending, with our tax money, at least, according to the AP, at least $684 million on propaganda to sign people up for this law, to do radio ads and television ads, to solidify this law and convince Americans that it's a good thing. If it were a good thing, you wouldn't need government propaganda to tell you it's a good thing. $684 million compared to our nearly $17 trillion of debt is a drop in the bucket, and $684 million is it is actually over $200 million. It's $200 million more than Romney raised in the last election. It's enough to run a presidential election. And it's enough to sway in the hearts and minds of voters across this country, solidify for two different presidential election cycles that hope and change is what America needed. And they're using the same organizing techniques that they used in 2008 and 2012 for Obamacare to convince people it's a good thing. Now, we are educated on what's happening. We must be engaged. Over the next 6 weeks, we have to stand up and sway more people. And when we do that, we will be effective. And I can tell you right now that we have to do what the ruling elite fears the most. We have to show up and stand up and speak out. And when we are, we will be effective. And that effectiveness is more powerful. Our ability, our power that we have in this room and across this country is more powerful than the millions of dollars that they're spending and the billions of dollars that the government can spend. If it weren't, the IRS would not have done what they did to us. So I'm asking you against all odds to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And let's make sure that we stop this law from being further cemented in our country, and we do everything we can to delay it for the next year by stopping the spending on it. And then next year in the election cycle, we convince more people why it must be repealed. And together, we can do this and we can make a difference. Thank you.